We now believe that 90 can be the new 40 with about an 80% probability within 8 to 10 years. So we're living in what I would consider a very exciting time where longevity is probably the greatest and largest disruptor. The joy of longevity is if we get 30 more years of productivity, people aren't going to retire at 65 and do nothing to 120. You still got plenty of time for retirement or a second or third choice. You're going to pay into Medicare and pay into Social Security and pay more taxes, and it actually solves our busted budget. But with lifestyle changes that people can do to stay healthier, with other things that relate to our environment, making it healthier from a particulate standpoint, etc., it's likely that someone born in 2030 will have a life expectancy of 120, not a life expectancy of 78 or 80.
The biggest thing I got out of your insights is that you can't out medicine poor lifestyle. And having a great lifestyle that's built around health, I mean, you enjoy your life and it's obvious. And I think that's the real key to longevity is Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unreasonable Health. And today I've got none other than Michael Roizen, Dr. Michael Roizen, with me. And I think you're going to enjoy this conversation because not only is he a world-class leader in age reversal medicine, and he's written a book that we're going to get into, and that book is called The Great Reboot, The Great Age Reboot, and we'll talk some about that. But just to give you a little background, is Dr. Roizen, he initiated and developed the real age concept to motivate behavior change. He served as the Cleveland Clinic's first chief wellness officer from 2007 to 2019 and founding chair of its Wellness Institute. The clinic's programs have helped the clinic not spend over $1.050 billion for its 101,000 employees. So he saved them a little bit of money, Dr. Roizen.
It's a little over 1.5 billion now, but yes.
Oh, is it really? Okay. Well, congrats. That's amazing. I'm sure the Cleveland Clinic loves you for that. And you're certified in internal medicine, anesthesiology. You're a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Williams. You've got your AOA from UCSF School of Medicine, and he now serves as Cleveland Clinic at Cleveland Clinic as the Chief Wellness Officer Emeritus, and is a professor, Lerner College of Medicine of the Cleveland Clinic at Case Western Reserve University. You've authored over 190 peer-reviewed scientific publications. Yes, you are a science nerd. We're going to give you the #1 award for that today. And then you've got 4 New York Times #1 bestsellers, 9 overall bestsellers, including is the initial #1 bestseller, Real Age, Are You As Young As You Can Be? Age Proof, Living Longer Without Breaking a Hip or Running Out of Money. In his latest book, What to Eat and When, a strategic plan to improve your health and life through food, and served 16 years on the FDA advisory committees. He's helped start 13 companies, co-invented a drug approved by the FDA, and has a weekly podcast now, and it's 980 plus weeks. He and Dr. Oz co-authored a daily column syndicated by over 100 newspapers that translate current scientific reports into actionable steps for lay audiences. And he is a recipient of an Emmy, an Ellie, and the Paul Rogers Best Medical Communicator Award from the National Library of Medicine and the United Way of Cleveland. Humanitarian of the Year Award. Dr. Roizen is devoted to helping people live younger. He consults with patients in Cleveland Clinic's executive health and wellness program. So holy cow, Dr. Roizen, what a resume you've got, my friend, but good to have you on the show.
I'm lucky to still be young and living well. So thank you. It's a privilege to be here.
Now, how many years young are you right now? Today is
well, my calendar age is 78. My real age is around 57. So if you look at it from, we always said that 80 could be the new 60 pretty easily. That came to pass. And we now believe that 40 can be, that 90 can be the new 40 with about an 80% probability within 8 to 10 years. So we're living in what I would consider a very exciting time where longevity is probably the greatest and largest disruptor. People think AI or people think going way back, electricity, etc. But living longer well will probably, if you get 30 extra years, that's probably going to be the greatest disruptor to date.
Yeah, isn't that phenomenal to think about? Like any invention, it's fun while you're alive, but imagine adding health to your years and years to your life. I mean, that's the work that you've been doing for decades now. So what's been
And you too. I mean, you're in that sphere.
I love it. Yep. I'm 2 decades in, so I've got a long way to go to to get where you are. But and I love it when I've met a lot of the longevity researchers and been in conferences with them and friends with a lot of them, and they don't walk the talk. One thing I do appreciate about you, Dr. Rosen, is you actually you do. You're younger. You've proven it. You've got the objective science to back it up, and maybe we can talk about some of the tests you're using. But then you're also someone who has the lifestyle that you're not just writing about it hypothetically, you're actually doing it. And I love that.
Yeah, well, if you feel better every day, it's a great encouragement to do it. You know, the amazing thing at the Cleveland Clinic, as you told your audience, we saved, I didn't spend about 1.5 billion, both compared to our trend line, compared to our competitors, and compared to the national averages, which are all at the same point. So it's about 1.5 billion we didn't spend on our 101,000 employees and dependents. And you'd think that just feeling well and the option would be enough for most people, but it isn't. And so really our job, I look at my job as a physician, in executive health, it's a little different. People pay enough, they're really motivated in that 1/10 of 1%. But for the vast majority, you've got to find what their motivator is. And so my job, I look at it isn't so difficult to know what to do. It's very difficult to motivate people. And that's what I think our job is. And so at the Cleveland Clinic, we motivated them by paying them out of the savings, but that's 1.5 billion after paying them probably over 300 million individually to change lifestyle behavior.
Wow. And so you found that by having a reward like a financial incentive, obviously it created some behavior change.
Well, money does work in this capitalistic society, and the Cleveland Clinic, despite being an academic institution, is one that can make decisions quickly, and also is in all of our earnings go back into building a better health system for our patients and the whole world. The Cleveland Clinic obviously is known for innovations such as the coronary angiography and kidney transplant, et cetera. And the one of the and even if you look at it, a lot of the TAVR, the work, the coronary work and the cardiac valve work that is non-invasive has been done here and established here. But the key point is it's a capitalistic institution, and all of our savings goes into better. And so that 1.5 billion has been a huge amount of ability to increase what we do and to help other people as well as our own employees live healthier.
Wow. Well, and a lot of economists, they say if we keep spending the way that we are on healthcare in our country, I think it's something like 15 or 16 trillion dollars, which is an unfathomable. Actually, no, excuse me. It's about 5 or 6. I think our total GDP. Do you know the total number that we spend on healthcare expenses?
Yeah, we're spending around 20%, 19.6% of GDP. It's thought our GDP is going to be around I think 27 trillion. So around 5.4 trillion is being spent on medical expenses. And a lot of that spending doesn't include some of the things that we do outside the medical system, such as fitness clubs, et cetera, that are really, for example, you use fitness for health.
Oh
Most
yeah,
of us do, not just for good looks. And so that isn't counted in that total, if you will. But
got
it
it.
is the problem with the joy of longevity is if we get 30 more years of productivity, people aren't going to retire at 65 and do nothing to 120.
Right.
So for 55 years. So we will get people, if you retire at 65 and work to 95 and live to 120, you still got plenty of time for quote, retirement or a second or third choice. But you're going to pay into Medicare and pay into Social Security and pay more taxes. And it actually solves our busted budgets if we really do get the longevity we think is 80% likely. So the joy is that we think we're going to be able to help an awful lot with the longevity disruptor.
No, no question. And even if you saved $1.5 billion for Cleveland Clinic, imagine if you put some of those policies into the healthcare system in the United States. I mean, that's really where I was going with that comment, and the amount of resources that we could deploy to better serve people would be amazing. So what are the big mindsets that you've created for yourself that's allowed you to arrive, because you're 21 years younger biologically than you are chronologically? Is that, or 22
Yeah.
years?
Well, about 21, a little over 21. So yeah, and the key driver, I think, is knowing exactly one of the things that I heard in a prior podcast you did that you do, which is there are what you call within normal limits on laboratory tests.
Yep.
And then there are also optimums. So we know that, for example, an LDL cholesterol of of 130 kind of is what is the average or normal range. But the optimal for health is probably below 70, maybe below 50. When we're our teenage years and up to our 20s, we're in the 20 to 40 range of LDL cholesterol, apolipoprotein B, whichever you prefer. But we don't keep that as a norm for us, but it really is what might be ideal. Similarly with, you mentioned, I think on the prior podcast, both homocysteine and C-reactive protein and a number of others. And so if you will, not only is it behaviors that make a difference, for example, in stress management and physical activity, et cetera, but it is getting to the outcomes. And the way Cleveland Clinic built itself was on outcomes. So long before anyone else was saying, how fast do the patients return to work? And how fast do they return to normal functioning after, for example, their aortic valve replacement? The clinic started doing that in 1977 and has done that ever since. And consequently, the Cleveland Clinic is known as #1 in cardiac care for 26 years in a row now. Truly amazing. If you look at 5,400 hospitals worldwide compete for that, and the
Yeah.
clinic has been #1 I think it's 26 years in a row now. And the reason is because we not only look at the outcome, but it's published. So every surgeon, every anesthesiologist, every primary care physician knows what everyone else does and drives to the best, if you will. And so what drives me is saying there's no reason as an individual I and my patients can't get there and for me, it's self-motivation. You feel better, and you try and avoid chronic disease. But for the patients, it's my job to find out how to motivate them. And as I said, in the people that are probably listening to the podcast, most of them are driven towards longevity, so they have it already, that motivation. Um, but for many people, it's trying to find that motivation. Is it their grandkids? Is it sex? Is it the looks? Is it whatever it is? You play on that to get them to get towards optimal condition.
Yeah, I think it's so smart. One of my mentors, Dan Sullivan. Have you met Dan Sullivan? Or do you know
Um,
of
it,
him?
if you're talking about the Dan Sullivan at the Cleveland Clinic, I know him well, but I
This
Dan
is a different one.
Dan
Yeah.
Sullivan at the Cleveland Clinic is an amazing internist who runs our. We have, we get a huge number of patients from around the country and around the world, and he runs the United States branch of patients with difficult problems who call the Cleveland Clinic, and he runs that. And so he actually is an amazing physician and pays a lot of attention to his own health as well. And I think he's 78 or 79, as your mentor, Dan Sullivan, is.
We got to connect those two. Sounds like they get along great. Yeah, Dan Sullivan is he founded Strategic Coach. It's a group for entrepreneurs, but he has all of his entrepreneurs do what's called the Lifetime Extender program. So you come in and he asks them, how old do you think you'll live to be? And people come in, they'll put an age like 80. Is pretty common. And he's like, okay, 80 years old, and he has what he calls the four freedoms. And he finds these are the four motivators for entrepreneurs, at least, to live longer. And he says, okay, well, everybody needs freedom of time, freedom of purpose, freedom of money, and freedom of relationships. And so he said, what if you have, all the resources you need financially? What if you have great relationships? And, what if you have a big purpose? And what if you have all the time you want to create the health that you want at the age of 80? Then how long will you live? And then everyone's like, oh, I'll live to be 100. Everyone renegotiates, but it's those four freedoms that seem to motivate some of his entrepreneurs. Pretty interesting. But one of the things you predicted in your book, The Great Age Reboot, and I believe I heard you speak about this too, was that by 2030, you're predicting life expectancies to be somewhere around 108. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are 14 areas of research into the mechanism of aging, almost all of which revolve around our proteins. So they're the same area that you're involved in, but they're different areas, whether it is CRISPR-Cas9 and editing out genes that make misfolded proteins or abnormal proteins, or whether they're a drug that blocks the effect of, for example, amyloid and tau attaching to neurons, or whether it is a system that elongates telomeres so that the stem cells can repair things for longer. They all have that same, and they're advancing, all of which have shown in at least mouse models and one other species. So it's key. It's not just mice, it's one other species for all of them, have shown that they can take people or animals the equivalent of 90 human years and make them the equivalent of 40 human years again. If one of those has a breakthrough, and with 14 shots on goal, we think there's at least an 80% chance of the breakthrough. And if one of those has a breakthrough, we're going to get to be able to be, instead of living to 80 or so now, to live to about 110 or so without major other things happening. But with lifestyle changes that people can do to stay healthier, with other things that relate to our environment, making it healthier from a particulate standpoint, et cetera, it's likely that 120, that someone born in 2030 will have a life expectancy of 120, not a life expectancy of 78 or 80.
Yeah.
So we think that's a real large possibility. And one of the keys is avoiding structural damage so that you can benefit from that reboot when it occurs. So one of the keys is doing what you're doing, staying as healthy as possible, to and what you advocate doing, staying as healthy as possible and optimizing the numbers as well as possible so that we don't get structural damage.
Yeah, I have a strict policy. Pain gets no free rent in my body. And so I'm always, and I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie. I love mountain biking, skiing, snowboarding, but so you're always wrecking, because I'm always trying, bigger things. So it's just mountain biking with my 18-year-old son. And I'm like, you're not going to be able to catch me, so you still can't catch me on the mountain bike, but I'm in my
Let
late
me tell you a
40s.
story about that, if I can. So, I captained the U.S. team in the Pan American Games in squash in 1984. But when in 2001, my son was captain of the Williams squash team and an excellent player. And I was still playing competitively, but obviously, someone who is, whatever he was, 21, is much more likely to beat someone who's in their early 50s than or late 40s than not. And especially because he was a top competitive player. But I was able to keep psychological advantage on him. I was a visiting professor at the University of South Wales in Australia for a week or 2 weeks in that year, and he came on spring break with us. It was after the competitive season, and so they not only gave us a house to live in, but gave me a key to the squash courts in Australia. And so he beat me 5 out of 9 matches that time. The next time we played, after the fifth time he beat me, we knew we were going to play 9. After he beat me, he was able to give me 7 points in a game to 9. So once your son starts beating you in mountain biking, the psychological advantage goes away. Let me tell you.
I can feel that. I can feel his breath on my neck.
But once it occurs, there's an amazing exponential jump in his winning compared to you.
Good. Well, I'll let him have it when he gets there. He's got to earn it first. That's funny. So, and you keep yourself pretty lively. What do you see? Some of the senolytic drugs, gene therapies, stem cell therapies. Are there certain things that you participate in that Cleveland Clinic is not yet engaged with, or do you kind of do the same protocols that you would do with any of your clients at the Cleveland Clinic?
Well, I'm a little more adventurous in with myself than with patients, but basically we give patients the education and the option. So I think the things that we have reasonably good data in humans on um, are both therapeutic plasma exchange
Mhm.
and some of the what I would call drug blocking agents. You mentioned, if you will, peptides, and the peptides that are mainstream are mainstream here as well. So the ones for testosterone release, the ones for, if you will, GLP-1, the Manjaro
Yep.
equivalent, which I think is much more effective than the Ozempic and
Sure.
Wegovy equivalent, as well. So those are already accepted. And the good news is by keeping in lifestyle shape all along, you haven't had to use those on yourself, and nor have I. But the thing I think if I was going to say where are we farthest advanced in science is in the human studies, we know that what is called therapeutic plasma exchange or
Yeah.
apheresis has pretty good human data at reversing um, early Alzheimer's disease in randomized controlled trials called the AMBAR studies. The and I look at bumetanide, Bumex, a water pill, $4 water pill shown by the Gladstone Institute to block the attachment of abnormally produced amyloid and tau to neurons as a early protection against dementia. It's a $4 a month water pill that largely got replaced by hydrochlorothiazide and furosemide. So in those areas, I'm a little more adventurous than most patients, although patients who actually have developed early dementia, we do refer for therapeutic plasma exchange.
Okay.
Um, but I think we're moving so quickly in both the epigenetic reprogramming that Yamanaka started and won the Nobel Prize for, and that now Aptos and Google Moonshot and four other institutions are pushing. There's an offshoot of the Hopkins group called Telomere 1 that is a drug that's both a TNF alpha inhibitor as well as um, shown to elongate telomerase, which is now has moved into dog studies at reversing uh, they're looking specifically at osteoarthritis.
Hmm.
There are all of these are moving into human trials, and so I think we're going to have enough information quick enough that I'm holding back on anything that has unknown risk. So you say, should we be prescribing rapamycin? And the answer is we don't quite know the risks yet or the
Sure.
benefits. And so I think we're going to have outcome data on most of these things fast enough that I and most of my patients will be able to benefit from them.
Man.
Um,
And do you use anything like quercetin or like
yeah.
dacetab, anything on
Oh,
the senolytic side?
yeah. So I use quercetin without its other adjuvant, but therapeutic plasma exchange should do have the same thing in getting rid of senolytic. It gets rid of the senolytic
Oh, yeah.
proteins, if not the cells. But the on the supplements, I'll give one plug at longevityplaybook.com. We have a free newsletter where we get both ask questions and answer them. And it's a 250 word once a week newsletter. It's free and it has a cartoon with it, so I like it. But anyway, the the point is we've been asked to look at 54 supplements, of which 17 have enough data to say that almost everyone over the age of 45, that is, the benefit is substantially greater than the risk for those 17. And it's simple. One is a multivitamin, half a multivitamin twice a day. Another is just the old-fashioned baby aspirin twice a day with half a glass of warm water before and afterwards. So there's some simple things, and so yeah, almost all of the simple ones that have enough data, we do. The other thing is the foodstuffs that have these in them. Whether it is salmon or mushrooms, etc. There are enough healthy things to do that that occupy me almost full time. That I'm waiting for and obviously I spend 5 days a week. I see patients 2 days a week, but the other five I am a true crazy medical nerd and reading. My fun. I may be the only person who goes. We have season tickets to the Cavaliers basketball team, Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yep.
I may be the only one who, during the timeouts, reads medicine in the audience. But the time 3.5 minutes, and I've seen every one of the routines by the second game of the year. So you get so anyway. But so I'm a true. My pleasure is reading medicine. So crazily enough, um, but I think you're doing a little more on as I hear what you do, and I don't want to characterize that, but you do an awful lot of what we do in executive health and wellness, in that it's optimizing what we know to optimize, but you
Yep.
do a little more in the peptide regime than we would do.
Yeah.
So,
And where do you see? I mean, some of the developments of peptides, there's peptides like BPC-157. There's some of the mitochondrial derived peptides. There's the growth hormone releasing peptides. And some are approved by the FDA, some have not been approved. And so, yeah, I've been using peptides for, 10 years of, tried a variety of them and seen enormous results. But the GLP-1s are really what have put peptides on the map right now, those GLP-1 agonists. Tirzepatide is the one that, you and I both feel is definitely more favorable than semaglutide or just Ozempic, the new
and by
one.
the way, they're not only good for weight loss. What we have found is they stop alcohol usage
Yes,
and they
yes.
decrease opioid craving as well. So those are only anecdotal. The drug Eli Lilly is doing the randomized controlled studies on them now, but excuse me for looking over there. But the data are going to be pretty darn clear that these are really breakthroughs, almost that we ought to have in our water supply. Meaning, if you think 17% of people are addicted to either food, alcohol, or opiates, have the
Yeah.
genes for it, we ought to be able to study those genes and get these people on those drugs early enough that you prevent the problem. And so I think that's where we will go with this, using, if you will, the vast improvements in human genome knowledge, coupled with this, to be able to um, what I think will be develop breakthroughs in drug addiction, as well as um, alcohol use, what is now called alcohol use disorder, as well as obesity. So I
Yeah.
think those have some real tremendous advantages.
Yeah, and you and I both we see the big barrier for us to help anybody. We can have the coolest science and have the best protocols and run all the fancy labs, as you know, but if people don't take action on it, it's pretty useless at the end of the day. And the GLP-1s, the biggest breakthrough that we've seen with it is people's behavior changes. And then we get new habits applied and they start changing their lifestyle. And now we pull them off of it and they do great. As long as you have the foundational lifestyle, it seems to be either we put them on a microdose or we pull them off it entirely. And it's been quite remarkable what used to
If
take
we
us.
haven't been, despite the lifestyle changes, we haven't had any place near the success you've had in pulling them off. Um, I have probably close to 200 of my patients on mostly Manjaro, and of the 20 or 30 who've tried to get off after 2 years. So we've only been using it for about 2 years since Robert Kirshner's study out of Northwestern showed the substantial benefits. Um, Only about three or four have been able to get off and stay off without substantial regain in fat.
Mm,
So, and I know you stress that I do. You've got to get them into the gym to, even if it's a home gym, but you've got to get them lifting weights. You've got to get them doing resistance exercise, or else they lose muscle mass substantially out of proportion to the if you will, fat mass they lose. So that's one of the keys in doing that. But unfortunately, in our practice, they revert back to, even though they will stay with that lifestyle change,
yeah.
they won't stay with the food craving. And it may be that we have a little different patient population. The patients we use it on literally think about food 24/7.
Oh,
So
yeah.
before they go on it, they're thinking, as they're eating a meal, they're thinking about the next meal. I mean, that's where it
Oh,
is really effective in as a change in behavior, because
got
they
it.
stop thinking ahead about food.
And are you using any other peptides like, do you know what tesamorelin is,
Yeah,
for
so
example?
we do use that for uh, for testicular, or if you will, to increase in hypogonadal disease,
Okay.
and we use ashwagandha a little bit in for growth hormone, et cetera. But we don't, we're pretty, how do I call it? We're pretty, um, how do I call it? Stable, meaning I guess we're pretty driven by FDA approval on whether we use something or not.
Mm,
So,
good.
and that's clearly at the Cleveland Clinic, but it's even in our own practices, if you will, that we try to educate and stay within the what has been approved through rigorous study, rather, and it is, as more and more people want more and more things outside the limits, we try and tell them, look, first do the first, if you don't have a normal blood pressure, normal ApoB or LDL, normal fasting blood sugar, normal LDL, normal weight for height, and normal no cotinine in your urine, and doing stress management regularly. Let's do those first before we,
Sure.
because those are so big. In other words, when you look at, for example, the value of stress management compared to the best of the supplements, well,
Yeah.
stress management is probably 25 to 30 times more important than the best of the supplements we have.
Yeah.
And so, getting people to do lifestyle changes and pushing on it is so important. You know what? Yeah, I am terribly motivated by the fact, in the VA, where the drugs are free, if you prescribe a antihypertensive, something to control blood pressure, or you
Yeah.
prescribe a statin, less than two-thirds will fill the prescription if they have to walk 2 blocks, even though it's free. And after a year, less than half of those are still on the drug. So
Wow.
and you say that's why I say it is how we motivate patients and give them knowledge that helps motivate them. And then, I I prey on their motivators to get them to keep doing it.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where we found like tesamorelin was FDA approved for
Yes.
HIV. It's called the Grifta is the
Right.
pharmaceutical name, but But we use that to help build muscle mass. And then as you wean them off the GLP-1 agonist, it seems to be a really good stabilizer. And there's other peptides that we'll use. MOD-SC is another big one, not FDA approved. But I look at a lot of these structures, and I think in the future, especially some of the exercise mimetics, I think they're going to be a powerful resource because we want to get the benefit. Like if we could just if you and I could find a pill that just solved like if it gave us the same benefits as a good workout did, can you imagine how healthy our patients would be?
Well, it still is, yes, I think it would make a huge difference. That's why UCSF and Mass General MIT have both tried to patent and have patents filed for Regan, which is a drug that is a protein that the muscle makes when you stress it, that goes across the blood-brain barrier and increases hippocampal size and hippocampal acetylcholine. So you know, but it is almost like the body has, when you look at the data, it is the body has formed a repair system for every one of our processes, and we just need to figure out how to nurture those repair systems so they keep working. One of the most interesting things I've seen is how the just changing from 6-member rings to 5-member rings in the synthesis of things has decreased toxicity. And we're going to see, I think, a group of those drugs that are what we would call plant alkaloids that are just modified from 6 to 5-member rings will in fact have major benefits for us for health and longevity. So the excitement is, how do you make sure you stay healthy for the next 3 to 8 years or 3 to 10 years? I don't know what it'll be, but I think it's coming along faster than I thought. So I think we'll see in 5 to 8 years the ability to go from 90 to 40 with a huge probability.
Man, well, I kind of have a feeling that you're going to be one of the first ones. As a 90-year-old, you'll be testing as a 40-year-old. So
I'm looking. You hope that you're going to be able to do that. That's correct. I'm looking forward to doing that. And in the meantime, as I said, the most important things we know, stress management, food choices and portion size, physical activity, avoiding. Now, for you, it probably your biggest risk is avoiding an unforced error of having an accident while you're doing some of the adrenaline gaining things, or actually it's dopamine gaining things.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we probably misnamed. I mean, Julius Axelrod probably misnamed that. Instead of adrenaline, he should have said dopamine.
Dopamine. Totally. I get a lot of dopamine out of it. It's great.
Yes.
Man, well, Dr. Roizen, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I think the biggest thing I got out of your insights is that you can't out medicine poor lifestyle, and having a great lifestyle that's built around health. I mean, you enjoy your life, and it's obvious. And I think that's the real key to longevity. Is there's nothing fancy. I mean, yes, there's cool technologies that are coming up, but if you're incredibly sick by the time those technologies are available, it's a small chance that your biology is going to have the same outcome that somebody who's healthy, their biology is going to respond much more favorably to those therapies. So, but any kind of last words of wisdom or insights?
The most important things in stress management are posse, purpose, and play. And, you can't have a better posse member than your spouse. So for the young people, work on your spouse. For us old people is to make sure we keep developing our posse as we get older.
Hmm.
That is calling old friends, relating mostly to our, it takes work when you're in your 20s and 30s, your classmates are your posse, your workmates are your posse. But as you get older, there is some work you need to do on it. So posse and you and I probably have the same purpose, which is to help people live younger, longer, so they can benefit from this. And then it is play. Your play is a little more risky than my play, but it is the whatever gets you the play actually help. Those are the three keys, and
Wow.
stress management is the one that most of us when I see executives, almost everyone says, I don't have stress, I give it. Well,
Yeah.
that's wrong. They have a lot of stress. They just aren't recognizing it, and they do a lot better with um, developing stress management tools and developing their posse.
Man, I like that. So, posse, purpose, and play.
You
That's
got
it.
it. Perfect.
Man, how cool is that? Well,
I got to ask you, okay, give me one take home too.
well, I think if people want to live a long time, you'd mentioned it before don't let pain go unfixed, because pain is what leads to a sedentary lifestyle, leads to more inflammation. You make poor food choices when you're in pain. It drains your energy. And then the other thing is your all-cause mortality goes up by 50% if you fall and break a hip at the age of 65. And so if you're in pain, you're not going to have the muscle mass to take you far enough into the future to take advantage of these therapies. So I guess my takeaway is like, fix your pain before your pain gets ahead of you.
Yeah, I like that. I'll give you one more. You know, the leading cause of death in 2022 for white guys over 65 was falls.
Yeah.
So that's a key point. And we teach, in our practice, one of the first things we teach is how to be a bad kid in school. When we were bad kids in school, when I was a bad kid in school, they probably didn't allow this in your era, but when I was a bad kid, they made me stand in a corner, face into the corner with a dunce cap on. Well,
Shame.
if you can do that on one leg for a minute each on each leg every day, in about 3 weeks, your balance remarkably improves. So
Yeah.
practice being a bad kid in school, and then we make almost everyone take a learn to fall class, because it is tucking and rolling that are
Yeah.
keys to protecting your brain and your hips. So, and people say, where do they give learn to fall classes? Worst comes to worst. I think you're in Utah, right?
Yep. I'm in Utah.
So, so every ski area, one of the first things they teach is learn to fall. So
Yeah.
go back to a ski area and take a learn to fall class if that's the only value of going to the ski area right away.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, and
Uh,
I have a worksheet called Fitness 50 at Age 100. And so I researched 11 exercises that you'd want to be doing as a 100-year-old that a fit 50-year-old can be doing. And one of the exercises is balancing on one leg, because it's also a great way you can predict if you think someone's had a stroke, just have them stand on one leg. And if they just can't do it at all, there's probably a good chance there's something happened. So,
right. And if you do it in a corner on that one leg, you'll
with a
fall in
dunce cap
the
or no
corner.
dunce cap?
You don't have to wear the dunce cap, but if you do it in a corner and fall, that was our, you can imagine us spitballers in grade school had a lot of dunce cap wearing to it. But anyway,
I think I
the,
was at the tail end, because I did have to put my nose in a corner, not with a dunce cap. They had removed that, but I got paddled in school,
oh
whack.
wow, they
Yeah,
did,
it's
they did.
violent.
The schools I didn't go to didn't paddle us, but they did make us stand in the corner. So it, it,
I
it's
think
a
I'd take a paddle over the dunce cap.
thanks very much. I appreciate it.
This has been great, Dr. Rosen. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? And maybe you can also provide that link to your newsletter too. That'd be great.
So it's longevityplaybook.com and sign up for the free newsletter. You can actually take the a short version of the real age test at actual age or skin age, sleep age on that as well. But longevityplaybook.com. And then I can give you my full email for people to write me. I don't have a problem with it. If they put in the subject line question, it's much better than the other junk email I get there. It's Dr. Mike Real Age, DRMIKE, realage@gmail.com is my actual email.
Oh, beautiful. Really appreciate your generosity for being on the show. And don't forget to pick up one of Dr. Rosen's books, but get his new one, The Great Age Reboot. You won't be disappointed. And thanks again, Dr. Rosen.
Thank you very much.